Okay. So today we're going to talk about self-improvement, which is the Rebbe's advice to how we approach improving in our spiritual lives, improving ourselves and improving others. This it would be on page 144. This is the last class, the last lesson on this course. And we're going to start with an exercise on page 44. Imagine that you resolve to grow in your spiritual and Jewish life. There are 6 activities that will carry you in that direction. Number them in the order you believe you should follow. So, study more Torah to gain a deeper understanding of Judaism. Study Jewish history to develop a deeper sense of connection and Jewish identity. Meditate on God to develop greater feelings for and a deeper relationship with God. Work and inspire your fellow Jews to grow in their spiritual life. Do it on the mitzvah. Attend Shabbat services. So, what would you think would be the order where you should start when it comes to self-improvement? Maybe you should start with meditation, maybe prayer, maybe study. So thousands of years ago, King Solomon wrote that the quest to improve, the aspiration to always reach for higher and greater levels, and the refusal to settle for the status quo are innate to the soul of the human being. So this is the very thing which distinguishes the human soul to the animal soul, right? And that is the fact that the human is always striving for more, is always striving to improve, right? So what is one of the main differences that differentiates between us and animals? In Judaism, we don't believe that humans are just another animal.
Freedom of choice.
Freedom of choice, exactly. And aspirations, right? We aspire to reach higher than we are at the moment. Animals don't really have that. They're kind of programmed to, just get on with it, which is good for them. So what does King Solomon say? Text number 1. Mi yodea ruach bnei ha'adam ha'olehi lamala v'ruach ha'behema hayoredet hi lamata la'aretz. How many understand that the spirit of the human ascends on high and the spirit of the beast descends to the earth? So how do you become a better person, right? Everyone wants to become better, a better husband, a better wife, a better parent, a better child, a better student, a better teacher, a better partner, and so on and so forth. So there's obviously countless books that have been written, self-help books, self-improvement books, and there's different seminars and things like that. What possibly can we add today which hasn't already been said in all these wonderful approaches and books? But the Rebbe kind of gave it a unique approach, a revolutionary approach. Many people wrote to the Rebbe, seeking advice in these matters. But the Rebbe many times didn't even wait to be asked, but he would tell people. And his approach was as follows. Actually, before we get into his approach, let's talk a little bit about the conventional approach, the older approach. And that is as follows. From the bottom up, the classic approach looks like this. bottom-up progression. So first rectify negative tendencies, then advance spirituality, right? So, like an inside-out approach. Start with yourself, and then focus on others. Start with getting rid of negativity, and then focus on positivity, right? For example, if you want to refurbish your home, or if you want to redesign something or improve, you got to first destroy, get rid of the rubbish, and then do the building. So we see this in Tehillim. Look in Tehillim, text number 2. Mi ya'aleh bahar Hashem, u'mi yakum bimkom kodsho. Niki chapayim uva levav, asher lo nasa leshav nafshi, v'lo nishpa lemirma, which in English means, King David says, who shall ascend the mountain of God, and who shall stand in his holy place? One who has clean hands and a pure heart, who has not borne my soul into vanity, and who has not sworn deceitfully. Which means, what's the mountain, right? What's the mountain of God? So just like the reason why it uses the analogy of a mountain is that when we just like a mountain, you start from the bottom and you work your way up. Climbing a mountain, right? The goal is like climbing a mountain, a long climb, with effort. And the higher you get, the holier it is. So too, when it comes to self-improvement, seemingly the approach is you start on the bottom and you work your way up, right? So when you look at a mountain, for example, you have to prepare yourself to climb a mountain. You have to get fit, right? You have to be prepared. You have to have the right gear. You have to lose some of those extra pounds. You have to, if it's a big one, big mountain, and so on and so forth. And there's different stages of climbing the mountain. So you can look at it the same thing with climbing the mountain of God. First, you have to spiritually get into shape, right? As we saw in the text, right? Clean hands, pure heart. You want to get closer to God. You want to become a better person. So you have to clean your hands, which means stay away from dishonest actions. And your heart, right? A clean heart would mean stay away from dishonest desires or immoral desires. And then you can get closer to God, right? Then you can start focusing on mitzvot, on spiritual things. That's seemingly, that's the approach. That's the conventional approach. And you have the similar thing in Tehillim, which goes like this. Sur meirav asetov bakesh shalom v'radfeil. Turn away from evil and do good. Seek peace and pursue it. Right? So in order to do good, the order is down pat. In order to do good, you got to first stay away from evil. Right? If you haven't rejected evil, how could you do good? So first you have to clean your heart and your hands from evil, and only then you can climb the mountain of God. This is the bottom-up approach. Begin with the bottom, right, with the low things, dealing with our negative behaviors and character traits and rectify them, and then proceed to do good, and then do better, and then better and better, and climb the mountain of self-improvement, step by step, taking each achievement as a success, and serving the point of reaching the top. Right? That's the bottom-up approach. Now, what's the inside-out approach? The inside-out approach goes something like this. Yeah. The inside-out approach goes something like this. Our life as Jews kind of consists of two aspects: our relationship with God and our relationship with our fellow, right? Now, just like we've seen, that the conventional approach of achieving our goals is bottoms up. So the same thing when it comes to our relationship with others, with improving others and helping out others, it's also similar, inside out, right? That's the conventional approach. Again, the keyword here is conventional. And you see this in the following piece of Talmud. Text number 4. I'll close the door. Quite noisy. The Talmud says, "Kishot atzmecha va'achar kol kishot acherim," which means beautify yourself and then beautify others. Right? In other words, you want to have a nice impact on others, you want to help out others, first worry about yourself. Okay? Now, this is expressed in the following in the following saying of Rabbi Mendel of Kotsk. Rabbi Mendel of Kotsk was a famous Hasidic Rebbe, right? And he had a very sharp wit. He had a very sharp way of teaching, a very sharp way of saying things. Right? He lived in the 19th century. He was famous for his straightforwardness and sharpness. And he said as follows: when I was younger, I thought I would change the world. I then decided, I grew a bit older, and I said, I can't change the world, but I'll at least change my city. And then a bit later, I got a bit older, I got married, had kids, and I said, forget my city. I'll try and change my family for the best. And now, he says, now at this stage, I've decided that I can try and only change myself. Right? So, yeah, this is the gist of the inside out approach. Worry about yourself and then worry about others, which kind of makes sense. Imagine if you go to a doctor and the doctor says, you got to quit smoking if you want to, if you want to be healthy. You got to get on a diet. You got to do this and take this medication and so on and so forth. And while the doctor's saying that, he's smoking on a cigarette. Right? It'd be very difficult to take advice from such a person because number one, it's you can't take him seriously, but obviously it's, if you can't stop smoking, I'd expect me to stop smoking, right? That's the gist of the approach of self-improvement and helping others, meaning focus on yourself and then focus on others. Right. But the Rebbe had a revolutionary approach. And his approach was something that went like the leap first mentality. Now, it's not a new thing the Rebbe invented, but it's something that the Rebbe stressed and took very seriously and spread. The Rebbe very often would quote the following saying of the fourth Rebbe of Chabad, which is the Rebbe Maharash. And he would say like this. The Rebbe Maharash said, you can see it in text number 5, it's in Yiddish, and it goes like this. The world says, right, which means the classic approach is, if you can't go under it, go over it, right? Let's say you come across an obstacle. First try go under. If you can't go under the obstacle, then go over. Right? But the Rebbe says, the Rebbe Marash says, first go over. First attempt to go over, and then if you can't go over, then try and go under. Try and go around. Right? The leap, which in Hebrew means in Yiddish, lechatchila ariber, which means first go over. First, over. When you get to a wall, don't worry about going under and around. First, try and leap the wall. Right? Which obviously is not just talking about a physical world. It's talking about it's a lesson in life. When faced with challenges, try and leap over them. And we're going to talk about that. Now, there's actually a song about this. It's a Hasidic melody without words, which is called the Lubavitcher Rebbe, which is the song of that Rebbe, of the fourth Rebbe. And it's interesting. I can actually send it to the group if anyone wants a link where it goes. The reason it's like it goes yeah 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 yeah, and then it goes so it goes many times. So it kind of shows on the idea of going over. In Hasidic philosophy, there's for most ideas, there's melodies as well, which let them when you sing the melody, it lets the idea sink in. Now, how does this look practically? Text number 6. Talmud Eruvin. The world is like a banquet. Grab and eat, grab and drink. Now imagine a lavish royal banquet where there's delicacies and food and drink and everything spectacular, but you come late, right? You show up late with your friends, and they're about to clean up, fold up the tables, lock the door. So if you come on time to the banquet, so there's the protocol. You start with some, cocktail in the reception, and then you sit down. You have the entree, and then you're onto some soup, and then a bit of this, and then appetizers, and then you get onto the main course, and then he comes around with some wine. Then there's dessert, right? That's if you come on time. If you come right before the end, and you have 20 minutes before they lock up, so you can grab. You just grab what you can before it closes. Grab and eat, grab and drink, right? Oh well, so the Talmud is saying that our world is like a banquet. You don't have time. You don't have time to sit there and it's a banquet where you came late. You have to just grab and take what you can. So the Rebbe would explain like this. In the previous generations, we had the luxury of following protocol. So you pursue perfection, first your own perfection, and then someone else's perfection, right? So you do it in the right order. You'd first think about getting rid of your negativity and then worry about bringing in positivity. You'd first worry about yourself and then the others. But in the last moments before the redemption, you need to get straight to the prize. Grab and eat, grab and drink. There is so much to accomplish, and there's not enough time. So leap, go for it, jump in. This is the approach. Therefore, instead of the bottom-up process, the Rebbe advocated that we approach things from the top down. Right? And instead of inside out, we should work outside in. So in summary, in our time, the Rebbe advocated a leap first mentality, going from the top down and from the inside out. Let me have a quick look at the chat over here. Let me try and get it. I don't go to the chat straight away because it's posing to be a bit of a challenge for me every time. Oh, there you go. I would think starting with observance of Sabbath, then mitzvah. However, they are all important trick question. Yeah, I mean, it's true. If you're talking about the order, Shabbat is probably something you would start with in general, but it also depends on what's comfortable and what's easier for you, what's harder for you. Sometimes it's good to start with something which you can enjoy more and then move on. Okay, so that's the idea. That's the approach. Now, how does it work? Outside in approach. So let's have a look and see that different cases, how the Rebbe applied this approach in his advice with people. And here on page 150 in text 7a, you have a letter that the Rebbe wrote to someone with a similar gist. So you ask me, how can I involve myself in disseminating the teachings, directives, and practicings of Chabad to others when I have not yet fulfilled the dictum, beautify yourself and only then beautify others? So someone wrote to the Rebbe concerned because he was a Chabad rabbi or whatever, or someone who was involved in teaching these things, and he was concerned that he hadn't perfected himself yet. So how can he be teaching others? So the Rebbe said, I have two responses. Number one, it is not, this is very interesting, it is not acceptable to withhold these teachings from individuals in your surroundings simply because you are not the way you should be. After all, your personal deficiency is not their fault. So the Rebbe is basically telling him, what's it their fault that you haven't perfected yourself? Why should they suffer? Yeah, there's people around you which need to get what you have to offer, right? Why should they be denied that because you're not happy with yourself? That's not their fault. Now we'll get to the second answer later, but let's first look at the first answer. The Rebbe isn't saying that the Talmud, God forbid, is wrong, yeah, that you shouldn't focus on yourself and then focus on others, right? But the Rebbe insists that a person should not wait until they have perfected themselves in a certain area before trying to influence others. So he's saying, yes, it's important to beautify yourself and beautify others, but you don't have to wait until you're finished with yourself and then go, start with others. Because people need things from you. And it's not their fault that you haven't got your act together. Right? So let's give an example. In order to teach a certain topic, the teacher has to know the topic very well himself, right? The better he knows it generally, the better it is, he can teach it better, right? Now let's assume that you're supposed to be teaching a certain subject to a class, and you feel that your knowledge is incomplete. So you don't understand. Let's say you have to teach a certain thing in algebra, and you feel that you're not there yet. So there's two approaches how to deal with this. The first approach is, sorry, 1 second. The first approach is saying, I can't teach the subject until I know it better, so I'm going to cancel or postpone the class until I know the teaching, until I know the teaching better. The second approach is, I'm already committed to teaching this class, and I cannot push it off. It's inconceivable for me to give up on my commitment. So I have no choice but to improve my own understanding to the best of my ability and be the best teacher as I possibly can be. Right? So it's not about how you answer the question, it's about how you frame the question in the first place. One way of framing the question is, how do I become a good teacher? Another way of framing the question is, what do these students need right now? So the idea is, you're not focusing on yourself as a teacher at this moment. You're focusing on the needs of your students. If the question is, how do I become a good teacher? So the answer is, okay, cancel the class, take time, study the subject thoroughly, master it. It might take a month, it might take a year, it might take a lifetime. And then you teach it the best way possible. But if the question is, what do my students need right now? The answer is, they need to be taught this subject. They need it now, not in a month, not in a year, not in a lifetime. And I happen to be the one who's available to teach them. So I need to step up to the task and do everything I can to equip myself for it in the best way possible and as soon as possible. Right? And this is the difference between the inside out approach and the outside in approach. The inside out approach begins with me. How can I be the best teacher? And then I think about the benefits of my students. The outside in approach begins with them, with the receiver, with the student. What do they need? What does my fellow need? Right? And then I get to myself. Now, the reason my starting point is the conviction, is the other, right? I'm talking about the other, is because God gave me this goal, presented me this goal, and He obviously empowered me to achieve this goal. Along with the goal, God gives you the power, the ability to accomplish. So once I understand what needs to be accomplished through me, the next step is finding out how I can do it. Don't worry about my situation and my abilities and where I'm holding and my mood and my laziness. Think about what needs to get done. Instead of climbing, leap. It's in America. Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country. Which basically means stop thinking about yourself so much. Focus on the other. Now we can look at the Rebbe's second point, right? Of the Rebbe's of that response to that person. Text 7b. Secondly, when you set the goal of beautify yourself, you must seek and exploit all possible methods and means of increasing your success. Now, when you are acutely aware that you will soon face numerous individuals and you will have to discuss important topics with them, that awareness will itself most certainly assist you in your battle for self-improvement and make your victory far quicker and easier. Which basically means commitment to help brings self-help. So the very rule of beautify yourself and then beautify others dictates that you should proceed to work to improve others without delay, because once you have the duty, once you have responsibility, once you got the job to be a teacher, you'll become a way better teacher. Don't try and become a good teacher before you're in the classroom. Right? You're knowing that you have, right, I can say this for myself. Studying these concepts that we talk about here in this course, if I wouldn't have to give it over in a class, maybe I wouldn't understand it so well myself. It's precisely because I have the class every Wednesday at 6 o'clock. I know I have to get my act together and I understand it and I explore the concepts and I think about it a lot better than I would if I wasn't teaching it. Or as a rabbi, when someone asks me a question, that's what causes me to understand this concept, which I might not have explored without the person asking me the question. Because I'm okay without knowing it, and then someone comes and asks you, it's like, oh, hey, that's a good question. I should think about that. Right? So the Rebbe's approach is jump in, leap. Don't take small steps, leap. And obviously we know this. It's good in business as well, as we know. In business, the best business advice is take the risk. Be daring. Be bold. Don't wait till it all makes sense and fits into place. Don't do all the thinking. Learn on the job. I saw an interview from a guy who was adopted by a Jewish father, and his Jewish father, when he was 18 or something, gave him. The father had some clinics or something, and he gave him two of the clinics, and he said, "Make them grow, right? Just do it. And if you ask me any questions, you failed." Which means you'll learn a lot better by figuring it out on your own. Okay, now that we have a video which expresses this idea.
Rabbi Meshulam Weiss and his wife Eileen were married in 1957. 3 days before their wedding, they had a private audience with the Rebbe.
So I gave the Rebbe the tzeitel, and the Rebbe looked at it, read it, and then he looked up, and he said to us, "Is it Yiddish?" So I said, "Yeah, I speak Yiddish, I understand Yiddish." And my Kava, she said to the Rebbe, "I understand Yiddish, but I don't speak it that well. I don't express myself that well in Yiddish." So the Rebbe said, "All right, when I speak to the chassan, I'll speak in Yiddish, and when I speak to the Kava, I'll speak in English." And that's what he did. So maybe a few seconds goes by, and all of a sudden, my wife starts to cry. And she looks at the Rebbe, and she says to him, "Can the Rebbe please ask the chassan to leave the room? I want to speak to the Rebbe in private." Well, I was in shock. I think the Rebbe was also in shock. And the Rebbe gave me a look, and I just backed out and walked out of the room. As I came out into the hallway, Rabbi Grona came running over. He said, "Where's the power?" I said, "She's still inside." He said, "No, you can't do that. We don't do it that way." I said, "Well, that's the way it is. What am I going to do?" And maybe about a good 20 minutes goes by that my wife is inside with the Rebbe talking. And then she finishes, and she opens the door, and she says, "The Rebbe said you should come back in." So I come back in, and I forget exactly how we were talking, but we more or less, the chiddush was ending at that point. And we started backing to the door, and the Rebbe got up from behind his desk, and he walked us to the door. And the two shomrim were waiting outside. My wife went on her way, and I went my way. And the next time I saw my wife was under the chuppah. And after the chuppah, we, of course, went into the yichud room. And as soon as we went into the yichud room, the first thing that came out of my mouth was, "What did you talk to the Rebbe about in there for 20 minutes?" So my wife said, "Well, I hope you're not upset. I told the Rebbe I want to call the wedding off." This was, remember, Thursday night, we're getting married Sunday. And the Rebbe said, "Why do you want to call off the wedding?" So I said to the Rebbe, "Because I have a terrible temper. I have no patience, and I lose my temper very easily. And until now, there's something, a chassan kala, he doesn't see, or he doesn't see everything because, but once we're married, it won't take long. He's going to realize he made a big mistake. He married a wrong woman, or he married a shrew, and we'll probably end up in divorce. So I've been thinking about it," she said, "and I decided I would rather not get married at all than get married and get divorced." So I said, "So what did the Rebbe say?" He said, the Rebbe smiled. And the Rebbe said to me, in English, the Rebbe said to me, "I'm going to tell you something. The Rebbe is going to bless you with many children, and the children will teach you patience. So there's no reason for you to call off the wedding. And until you start having the children, you should do volunteer work in a hospital, preferably with children in the hospital. And that will also help you become patient with people, and your temper will not be a problem.
So here we see an interesting scenario of the same thing, but in someone wanting to get married, and then having second thoughts by realizing, hey, I got this problem, anger problems, and I feel like I can really wreck my home. So the Rebbe tells her, your children will teach you patience. So in summary, the outside in approach rather than the inside out approach focuses on what others need rather than our own personal situation. The imperative to help others will in turn aid us in our own self-improvement. Right. Now, the next example which we're going to bring is from another topic, and it's a talk of the Rebbe about charity. So I'll kind of paraphrase it. It's on page 153. You can read it inside. So it says in the Hasidic discourse, right, the Hasidic ma'amar, that you should give charity in an infinite manner. And the Rebbe says this was confusing for me because this was the first time that I've come across such a thing about charity. What does it mean, charity in an infinite manner? How could you give charity in an infinite manner? So there's different ways to give charity according to Judaism. There's different standards. The most typical standard, right, which that is the mitzvah, the minimum, is to give 1/10 of your earnings to charity. So let's say you make $5,000 a month, you give 500 of those dollars as soon as you get your paycheck straight to charity. Minimum. This is the mitzvah according to the Torah, even according to most opinions. So it's even a biblical commandment, right? You make 10,000, you give 1,000. You make 500, you give 50, and so on and so forth. Now, then there is a higher standard, right, which is not an obligation, but it's a better way of doing the mitzvah, and that is giving 1/5, right, which is double, not 1/10. It's a generous way of giving charity, right? Yeah, so you make 5,000, you give 1,000. Then there is a third way of giving charity, which is called charity by judgment, where we judge ourselves and see how much we need to live, our expenses, and the rest we give to charity, right? So, for example, you would do with savings, right? You'd say, how much do I need to live? The rest I'll put away on the side. So the same thing you do with charity. How much do I need? The rest give to charity. That's judgment, right? And now, this is not defined by a percentage, not a tenth, not a fifth, not even a bigger number. But it's limited, right? Giving is limited because you're saying, whatever I don't need, that's what I'll give, right? But then there's an even higher approach, an even different approach, and that is, don't consider yourself at all. As soon as you get someone who's in need, as soon as you encounter someone who's in need, give them charity without thinking about yourself and how much you have. So it's not saying get your paycheck and give it straight to charity. It's saying think about the other, the need, rather than thinking about you as the giver. Right? Don't think about how much you can afford. Give it straight away. Okay. Now that is the unlimited, the infinite way of giving charity. In other words, I'll read the last piece. The degree to which we feel the pain of our fellow and relate to their need is infinite, so that there is no room for any calculations whatsoever regarding our own personal needs. We have but one consideration. We must provide the needy individual with the amount they require. If we do not have that sum ourselves, we will put every effort into obtaining it. And when we truly make this resolve, God will certainly assist us in fulfilling this mitzvah. So, I mean, the only example I can think of that is like a child. If you have a child, even if you're struggling, you're not going to say, okay, I'll make sure I have food, and then if there's more, I'll make sure my child has food. You'll actually do the other way around. If your child needs food, you'll make sure he has food. And if, God forbid, you're struggling that you can't even afford dinner for both of you, right? So you'll give your child, right? You'll give your child first, and you'll go hungry that day. So if you can view every person like that, the way you view your child, that's the infinite way of giving charity, right? There's a need, you provide, regardless of where you're holding. In other words, when the focus is on me, the giver, and where I stand right now, it will always be limited. It will be greater charity or less charity. I'll give as much as I desire, how much I'm feeling, or how much I'm obligated, or much as I can afford. But it's the inside-out approach of giving, and it's limited to my own resources, nature, and generosity, and so forth, and so on and so forth. But when I'm focused on the receiver, it's limitless. It's defined not by me, but what is required to help the person in need. Right? And the Rebbe finishes off by saying that when that's my attitude, God will for sure provide and help me succeed. Okay. Another video.
Rabbi Moshe Tzur is the founder and administrator of a number of educational and charitable institutions in Jerusalem. In 1969, he was serving in the Israeli Air Force.
We was in Bir Gavrafa without any good conditions and good food. One day stopped trailers and gave to each one of us a package. It's a Chag Purim Sameach from the Rebbe Lubavitch. And we always wonder who is the Rebbe. And it was like a Fata Morgana in the middle of the desert to receive a piece of candy and regarding from somebody that really care for you. And I was very impressed. On 1971, in the Milchemet HaAtasha, one day Chabad people asked us to put a tefillin, but at that time, you don't know if it's Monday or Tuesday or Shabbat, and all of a sudden somebody asks you to put a tefillin. So when I started to say Kriyat Shema, I tried to say it, Shema, Israel, and I know it, so I said it like fluently, and then I got crying because it was very emotional for me, and since that days, I got back to my like religions. When I come to Chicago, I got to know Rabbi Daniel Moskovich, he should rest in peace. I become very close to Lubavitch community and to Chabad. And he used to come to my warehouse every Friday in the morning. And one time they honored me in some dinners that the Chabad house did. And I was twice in Ityahdut with the Rebbe. And one time he asked me what I'm doing, and I had an idea to be helping some more Jewish community. And he was telling us how is important the mitzvah of ve'afta le'racha kamocha, to love the others just like you love yourself. And the Rebbe was like asking a question: why is the heart of the person, of the human being, is in the left side? Because in Judaism, the right is the chesed. If it's so important, why Hashem didn't make the human being create that the heart will be on the right side and not in the left side? So the Rebbe, he should rest in peace. He said that when a Jew look at the other, he have to know that the heart is for the others. Because when I look at you, your heart is in my right hand, and my heart is in your right side. So when the heart is for the other, then you really make the mitzvah of ve'afta le'recha kamocha, because the heart is not for you. The heart is always for the others. Since then, thank God, I came back to Israel, and I established 2 important yeshivot and 4 kollelim. And I think that the Rebbe definitely did a very important message in me and in my mission as a Jew. It changed all my perspective about life.
So, as a joke, which goes as follows: there was a Hasidic master whose name was Herschel Osterpoller. He lived in the 18th century. He was like a famous jokester type of thing, but he would do it in a way of teaching lessons to people through his humor and his wit. So one time he heard about a certain miser, a miser who doesn't, can't depart from his possessions, who had the terrible habit of inviting beggars to his home, and having a huge meal there, a really really lavish meal. And as soon as the beggar would try and eat something, the poor man would try to eat something, he'd start asking him questions, and he would entertain him to see that the poor person was, instead of able to eat, was talking to him constantly. And then the meal ended, and he would send the guy out, and the guy barely ate anything, and he would go hungry. That was the person's habit. So when Reb Herschel heard about this, he went straight to the town where this miser was, and he went to the shul on Friday night. He was invited by the miser. He was invited home. He went to the miser's home. There was a beautiful meal set out with all different delicacies, and he sits down and he's about to start eating, and the miser says, "So where you from?" And he says, "I'm from Mezhebush," which is a town in Ukraine. And he says, "Oh, how did you travel?" "I traveled okay, thank God." Yes? I'm a little bit fast, sorry. Okay, when you finish. So I traveled good, thank you. And he says, "Oh, you're from Mezhebush. Do you know my uncle Leib?" "Oh, Leib, the shoemaker. Yeah, of course I know him. How's he doing?" So Herschel said, "He died, unfortunately." "What? He died?" said the miser. "He was only 20, he was in his 20s and a strong, healthy man. How did he die?" The miser was shocked. And Herschel was eating. He started to eat while the miser was contemplating terrible news. Herschel started with the soup. Then the miser said, "Okay, that's terrible, but do you know he had a brother? What was his name? Chaim. Do you know Chaim, his brother?" "Oh, Chaim, his brother. He died too, unfortunately. He's also dead." So the miser said, "What? Chaim, dead? My cousin?" And he started to eat more. He was eating the chicken. Reb Herschel, while the miser was sitting and watching him, And then he said, "Oh, very well. I'm sure they left the business. There was a nice business, the shoemaking business, that they left it to Chaim's son, who was a great boy. Oh, Chaim's son, he's dead too, unfortunately. What? He couldn't believe it, and he was grieving, and he couldn't even approach the food while Herschel was helping himself to everything, and everyone he asked about, Herschel was saying he's dead." And then let's move your arm, please. And then Herschel said, then the miser said to Herschel, "Well, after Shabbos, I'm gonna have to send my wife to Mezhebush to check on the family to make sure everyone's okay." And Herschel said, "Your wife? She's dead too." So the miser said, "What? My wife? She just served the meal. She's sitting right there. What do you mean she's dead too?" So Herschel said, "Well, when I'm eating, everyone's dead. As far as I'm concerned, everyone's dead." So the message was that, well, he was able to turn the tables on the miser, who remained hungry, and he ate, and he taught the miser a nice lesson. But the idea is that he was focused, he was focused on his goal. When you're eating, everyone's dead. Doesn't matter what's going on around you. You have a goal, right? So we set ourselves goals, and then we make sure to reach those goals. We don't just we don't just we don't just see what we're capable of and then set the goal according to that. So now, many people have will turn us into self. Charity is limitless when focusing on a person in need. So, many people, marvel at the Chabad, for example, at the organization, how much they accomplish around the world, and or other Jewish organizations as well. But a lot of the success of Chabad is to do with this approach, right? The outside-in approach, right? You can see here in text number 9, you can see the Rabbi talking to a organization, Chabad Yeshiva in Montreal. The Rabbi says like this. In regard to the discussion at your meeting concerning the deficit in the yeshiva's budget, I've already addressed this in my earlier conversation with you. Up until now, you tried to run things in a limited way, i.e. to direct your spending in accordance with your income. You should now try the opposite approach. That is, to endeavor to increase your income in accordance with the needed expenses. This is in accordance with the saying of the Rebbe Marash, which was given over by my father-in-law, the Rebbe. The world advises that you cannot go under, then you must leap over it. I maintain leap first, with a proper determination. Right? So you see the same idea. That the conventional way of running an organization is you see how much you're able to raise, you see how much budget money you have, and then you decide what to do. The activity, right, is based off the budget. The Rebbe is saying no. Your starting point should be what needs to be done, and then bring in the money that you need to support that. Right? Fundraising goals are set based on what the organization needs to accomplish. And that's kind of a Chabad approach in many things that we do. Right? We see what needs to be done, right? That the holidays are coming up. You have to make sure that there's something for every age. For example, Purim. Got to make sure that there's Purim for the kids get something for Purim, and the old people get something for, and the families, and the ladies, and the men, right? And then you make sure you get the money. But you first gotta you gotta set the tone by looking at the demand, at the need. Not the other way around. We don't say, okay, let's see how much we can raise for Purim and then try and divide it. And that's the approach. That's the successful approach of running a good organization. Don't do less, just get more. You know what I mean? Okay. So a summary. Sorry, this is a bit of a summary. Outside in case studies. So unqualified teacher, it would apply like this. The imperative to help others will in turn aid us in our own self-improvement. Infinite charity. Charity is limitless when focusing on a person in need. And reverse budget, determine what you need to accomplish, set the fundraising targets accordingly. Whatever needs to be done will raise the funds. Okay, now we spoke about the outside-in approach, right? Which was the guiding light in relationship with others. Now we can go back to the from the top down approach, a way of self-improvement in our own relationship to God. Now, so the traditional approach is trying to climb the mountain, seeing where I stand now, what my abilities are, and making my way up. But that's the bottom. That's the bottom up approach. And now we're going to talk about the top down approach, which focuses not on where I am, but what the goal is. On the goal, focusing on the goal. We're goal focused. My starting point is the conviction that because Hashem presented me with this goal, Hashem for sure empowered me to achieve it. Once I have a clear picture, what needs to be accomplished, the next step is to find the way that gets me there. Instead of worrying about my situation and my abilities, I think only of what needs to be done. Instead of climbing, I leap. Instead of climbing, I leap. Right? Hashem gave us all a goal. Be better Jews, right? Be better people. It's a fact that we have the ability to accomplish that goal. It's non-debatable. Because Hashem gave it to us, so by definition, in the same postal package, there's the ability to do it. There's the power to do it. Our only question is how we get there. Right? Following the bottoms-up approach, so sur meira, steering clear from the negative, precedes asay tov, doing good. That's kind of the logical order. But the top-down model disregards this logical order. First, do good. Instead of worrying about your circumstances, think only of what needs to be done. Instead of climbing, leap. Now, this approach we can learn, and Rabbi talks about this in a lesson from the 10 plagues. Right? In the 10 plagues, you see as follows. The first plague was the water turned to blood. It's Pesach and not so long, so it's good to talk about this. Water turning to blood. And the second plague is, the first plague is, what do we learn out of the water turning to blood is water is cold, right? And blood is warm. So the lesson is, let warmth replace apathy, right? The coldness. Let warmth to Judaism and to God replace the coldness and the indifference to it. Now, the second plague is frogs, cold-blooded frogs. Now, and that is changing that which is cold that which is warm, the Egyptians were warm to, and being cold to that. So the first plague is replacing coldness to spirituality with warmth, and the second plague is replacing warmth to materialism with coldness to materialism. Right? The unholy passion, the passion to physical things, to replace that with coldness. And here you see the same approach. First focusing, we're not saying first become cold to negative things and then become warm to spiritual things. We're saying focus first on finding spiritual things exciting and be passionate about them. And then you'll get to the next step. But first focus on asay tov, on doing good. And then the negativity will fall away. Text number 10. All the narratives, page 156, all the narratives included in the Torah are directives and guidance for all generations to come. Similarly, the Torah's account, right, with the blood, representing warmth and passion for doing good, preceding the plague of frogs, representing dispassion for negative matters, direct us to follow suit. We must focus on doing good right from the start. Right? As the Rebbe Marash said, the world advises that when facing an obstacle, if you cannot go under it, you must leap over it. I maintain leap first. Consequently, we also need this approach of leaping over in the sense of immediately working to reveal an abundance of light that will consequently on its own dispel the darkness. Instead of worrying about the logical order of self-betterment, just go ahead and start doing a mitzvah. Flood your life with warmth and holiness until there won't be any room left for bad. Right? That's the solution. Don't focus on the bad. Focus on doing more good. And in return, there won't be much place for bad left. On a similar note, what we mentioned about from the Rebbe of Kotsk, or Mendel of Kotsk, which he said, my fervent wish is that my followers abstain from wrongdoing, not because misdeeds are not allowed, because they have no time for them. We're not focusing on the badness, it's similar to what we said with mental health, right? The therapy, the conventional approach to therapy is focusing on the problems and talking about them, right? And the same thing over here. We're saying, don't focus on not doing bad. Focus on doing good, and you won't have time to do bad. Don't give your evil inclination the time of day. Focus on doing good. You're bored, find something good to do with your time. Reach out. Whatever you're good at, find your good, your strength, and use it for the benefit of everyone. So this is kind of not the logical approach, but it's the leap approach, leap first approach. Jump ahead and do a mitzvah. And holiness of the mitzvah will leave no room for negativity. Do the mitzvah. Do the mitzvah, the understanding and feeling will flow. So there's another aspect, and that is 1 second, sorry. Sorry. Okay. Now, on a similar note, we're talking a little bit about our feelings, our passion to do things, right? So someone can think, this is text number 11. In order to start doing mitzvot and getting closer to Hashem, first, you got to learn all about Judaism, right? Learn about God, learn about God's connection to the world, and so on and so forth, the meaning of the mitzvot, understand them, become passionate about them, and then you can do the mitzvah, right? Get to the action at the end. So the counter argument is Torah shares the story of Abraham. God told Abraham, go from your land. So the Torah didn't tell us anything about Abraham's life before that, right? His achievements, his virtues, and that is precisely the lesson for us. The very foundation and starting point of Abraham's coming close to God is when God told him, go. It began with action. He had to do something to carry out a divine command in actuality. So what the Rebbe is saying is that each and every one of us is connected to God in our essence. There's nothing more natural for a Jew than to do a mitzvah. It's an action which actualizes your innate bond with Hashem. So instead of climbing the mountain of learning, feeling, spiritual growth, meditation, and so on and so forth, first do. Start from the top. Right?
In 1969, Mr. Gordon Zacks was chairman of the UJA's Young Leadership Cabinet. Shortly after delivering a keynote address to 3,000 communal leaders from across the U.S. and Canada, he was informed that the Rebbe wished to meet with him.
I'm escorted into the Rebbe's study. And I'll never forget it if I live to be 100. This man, I mean, there are books piled all the way to the ceiling, all around the office. He stands up. He has these penetrating blue eyes, crystal clear eyes. His skin is almost translucent. I mean, not a wrinkle, just an incredible, peaceful, penetrating look in his eye. He said, Mr. Zacks, I have read your speech. It is clear to me that you have taken good care of your mind. I can look at you, and it's clear to me that you've taken good care of your body. What are you doing for your soul, Mr. Zacks? That was the opening to the conversation, which lasted an hour and a half. So he says, do you believe in revelation? I said, I believe in God, but I'm not sure I believe in revelation. I believe that the Bible was inspired by God, but I haven't yet accepted the fact that it's word for word written by God. Now listen to this. I mean, this is when it really gets amazing. He says, Mr. Zacks, your problem is you're trying to think yourself to God. You can't think yourself to God. You have to experience the why, the how of being Jewish. And in the living of a Jewish lifestyle, you will discover God. He's within you. But you're trying to connect to him through your head. You have to connect to him through your heart. And you can't get there through your head. You got to get there through experience. He says, let me send a member of my community to live with you for a year and teach you how to be Jewish. If at the end of the year, you find God in your soul, in your heart, you have achieved the greatest gift you will ever have in life. You've got to release yourself from this mental approach to life and God and come with me in this journey of the heart.
Beautiful. Okay, now how do we leap? So you, have a look at we're going back now to the exercise, page 159. Now that we've said what we've said, go back to the exercise on page 159. It's the exercise we did at the beginning, and see if you put the order differently from the aspects which we said, which you might have done at the beginning of the class. The truth is, this is very important. And that is that the Rebbe is not saying, it's not that you change the order. We're not saying first focus on others, finish with that, and then focus on yourself. Or first do good, and then focus on your feelings. Or first, do the big things and then the small things. What we're saying is we're not rearranging the order. We're throwing out the order. We're saying there is no order anymore. Grab opportunities as they come. This is what we're saying over here. If the opportunity arouses to light Shabbat candles, for example, grab the opportunity. Don't wait until your kitchen's kosher or something. If the opportunity arises to put on the tefillin, put on the tefillin. The opportunity arises to put up a mezuzah, put up the mezuzah. Don't wait until you got everything else figured out. There is no order in service of God anymore. Grab opportunities. And the grabbing of opportunities and the focusing on helping others, regardless of your own state, being focused on others, being focused on the opportunities as they arise, that will allow you to grow heaps and bounds quicker than you would have if you did the logical approach. Focus on the needs of others and what God desires of us, not what we desire, not on us. And like this, you can leap first, seizing every opportunity that comes our way. Now here's another exercise, finding meaning. This is kind of a conclusion of the entire course. We're coming to the end of this class, which is the end of our 6-part course of Advice for Life. During the last 6 weeks, we explored the Rebbe's unique approach to 6 key areas of life. Let's take a moment to fill in, if you have the books, in a concluding exercise about what we've learned. The exercise is briefly summarize one practical message that personally resonated with you from the Rebbe's perspective on following areas of life. So you have your work life, family and home, physical health, emotional well-being, life challenges, self-improvement. Review your answers to the above exercise. Can you pinpoint a common denominator between the Rebbe's approaches to all these topics? So we're not going to spend much time on the exercise because not everyone has the book, but let's think about what the common denominator is with all these lessons, with the approach in all these different aspects of life. I think one common denominator, one common thread is optimism. Optimism. Unfailing optimism and trust in God's goodness. That's number one, I think, is in all the aspects the same. Another common denominator, which lies at the very core of it all, is that the Rebbe encouraged us to step out of ourselves and our limited view on things, and to search and discover meaning everywhere and in everything. That's like the umbrella idea which overlaps, which brings everything, sticks everything together. Don't focus on your limited view of things, but search for meaning everywhere and in everything. Life is an endless quest for meaning and deeper purpose. Whatever we face, we need to ask ourselves, what does God want of me with this particular situation? What is my mission? What might be deeper purpose? And when we do our best to implement the answers to this question, then even life's darkest moments can be redeemed and even transformed. Here's a brief story to illustrate this point.
My father was nifter when I was still in college. That was in 1953, and 5 years later, my mother was nifter on Yud Nissen. So I wrote to the Rebbe a long, long, tearful letter, pouring out my sorrow at the loss of two parents and just being in my 20s. So I wrote the letter and I made an appointment to go see the Rebbe. I walked into the room. I just stood there and I cried and cried and cried and cried and couldn't get a word out. The Rebbe just sat there looking at me very kindly. He looked very compassionate and he looked sad, reflecting my sadness. And then he said to me, ich weiß nicht, was ich kann noch mehr sagen. Ich habe alles geschrieben in my brief. And I said, I never received the letter. And then we had a very beautiful yechidus, which was based on what the letter was all about, but it was more wonderful because I received it in person. And then a few weeks later, I did receive the actual letter. All religious people, even non-Jews, believe that the creator of the world is infinite and incomprehensible. Not only did God create the world so many thousands of years ago, but it is our firm belief that God is also the continuous master of the world, who is constantly watching over it and taking care of everything and every individual. Obviously, it is impossible for a human being to understand the ways of God. All believers in God believe also in the survival of the soul. When the physical body ceases to function, the soul continues its existence, not only as before, but even on a higher level. And here the Rebbe actually explained to me, and I thought it was beautiful. He knew that I had studied science in school because we had discussed that before. He said, if you take a paper and you light a match to the paper is going to change form and shape. It won't be a paper anymore. It will be just ashes. So in that way, we can understand that anything that has ever been created or existed will always remain. May God grant that you will carry on the conduct of your home with joy and gladness of heart. And if you feel your responsibilities with joy, as your parents would want you to do, this is the greatest joy that you can bring to their souls. And this will also bring you and your additional blessings, both physically and spiritually, with blessings and then the Rebbe's signature.
Hannah Sharfstein, the lady from the video, came into the Rebbe's room focusing on her sorrow. And she left with a mission. Focus on how she can make her parents proud. The Rebbe shifted her focus, shifted her perspective. A, she would cause tremendous joy if, number one, she was fulfilling her responsibility in life joyfully, and B, she was doing what they would have dearly wanted her to do. The Talmud shares a story about Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, who was a great tzaddik, a righteous man and a sage. And it said that on his deathbed, he started to cry. And he said, I don't know where I'm going, to heaven or to Gan Eden or Gehenom. And the question is, he was such a great scholar and a righteous man. He spent his whole life doing mitzvot and good things and studying. How could he not know where he's going? Obviously, he's going to heaven. So the Rabbi explains it that he was so mission focused his entire life that he didn't have the chance, he never stopped to think about his own situation and where he's going. only on his deathbed, when he had finished his entire mission and he had no more strength to think about the world anymore, that's when he, for a moment, thought about his own situation. And that's where he's like, hey, where am I going? This is true greatness. Being mission focused, not self-focused. Now, what's our mission? Right? God put us in a situation of, being part of the Jewish people, and obviously doing mitzvot is central to our mission. But the Torah has many missions, many mitzvot. So the Rebbe actually took 10 of the mitzvot and focused on them and said, these are good things which we could be involved in. These are like campaigns which are most important in our time. Look on page 161 and we'll see the 10 campaigns of the Rebbe. Shabbat candles, tefillin, and so on and so forth. And not only God gave us a mission, not only to focus on ourselves, but to reach out to each other. So obviously we're a lot of times in a situation where we're able to encourage others to do a mitzvah and to fulfill their personal mission. Doing people favors materially, financially, medically, spiritually, offering good advice, whatever it may be, getting out of a comfort zone to do others favors and good deeds. So, with that, my dear friends, we come to a close our course. Let me just have a look at the chat. Do what you can where you are with what you have. I have ticket all limits what I am doing. Wonderful. So, my dear friends, thank you very, very much. I hope to see you all in the next course.
Thank you, Rabbi. We're so grateful.
And let me just put on the last video. I don't know if it's here. No, sorry. The key points on page 165. Let's read the key points. The most effective path to self-improvement is to stop focusing on ourselves and to place others at the center of our attention. Number 2, when helping others, our focus should be on what they need rather than what we are able to do to help them. When we act with this mindset, we will be able to achieve beyond our own estimate. 3, a logical approach to advancing in Jewish observance is to deepen our understanding of Judaism and to subsequently act on it. You can have it. The Rebbe advocated a leap of first approach of forging ahead with active Judaism, doing a mitzvah, understanding and feeling then flow naturally from the action. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a wonderful evening.
Lesson 6.
Oh, we did that.
Spiritual heights.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Rabbi.